As I told you yesterday that today we shall start a new chapter, that is cache memory. This is an important part of our discussion. So I hope that all of you will carefully attend next couple of lectures, including the today's one. And there are concepts which I shall be introducing now, which are important for many of the subjects that you will be learning in the next semesters or maybe in future. Okay. So I want all of you to be attentive, and let's have some discussions during the classes also. Okay. If you feel that something you are not able to understand, please ask me. Otherwise, I will also interact with you frequently during classes also. So, first of all, let us define that what do we mean by cache memory. A basic, we need to understand the fundamental concept of cache memory and why it is needed. Can someone tell me that why, when we have a memory, what are the drawbacks of the conventional memory? If you think about from the pipelines perspective, let's assume that we have a 5-stage RISC pipeline that we are using. Where is the drawback or what is the bottleneck in this whole system?
Memory.
Why?
Yeah, fast memory is too small.
Somebody is saying memory is too small.
So fast memory is too small and big memory is too slow.
What do you mean by fast memory?
So like the memory from which we can read and write faster, it is expensive, so we cannot have a big amount of it.
Okay, so when you talk about faster, it needs to be quantified. Okay, so if you look into the pipeline, what we expect that the pipeline actually performs at its optimal case when in each and every clock cycle one instruction coming out of the system, correct? But
Yes.
the problem with the memory system is that it is difficult to deliver the data, whether you are doing read operation or write operation in one clock cycle due to the constraint of the electronic circuit. We may not be able to provide the data, or memory may not be able to provide the data as quickly as you want, because you know that when instruction 1 or instruction I is going through the fetch stage, what do you expect? Instruction I-1, which has already been fetched, is currently in decode stage. Then instruction I-2 may be in arithmetic logic stage. Instruction I-3 may be in memory stage. Instruction I-4 may be in register write back stage. Just assuming a simple 5-stage pipeline. Now, the current instruction I, which is at the fetch stage, you need to complete the fetch within one clock cycle. Now, there is a problem because the memory operations are slow in nature, and it is highly unlikely that you will be able to perform a fetch operation in one clock cycle. So that is the reason that we actually would like to spend some time or invest some money on designing faster memory. Obviously, faster memory, it's important, but the point is how fast we can design or how fast the memory can be. That is also an important part. Okay. Now let us understand the memory hierarchy first. So before we basically go for cache memory, let us understand the memory hierarchy. This memory hierarchy is very important. We need to understand the memory hierarchy. So if I draw the hierarchy in block diagrams, it looks like that. This is processor. Okay. Inside the processor, you have registers. You have L1 cache. Or which is called primary cache. This is L1. You can also have L2 cache, secondary cache. Usually they are inside the processor. You may have also L3 cache outside the processor. It may not be needed. This is L3. Okay, this is off chip. These are on chip, both L1 and L2. Then you have main memory. Then you have secondary memory. L3 you may ignore, but this is the typical hierarchy. With that, if I basically draw the factors, various factors, you will find that with this, the increasing speed. So as you go upward, the speed increases. At the same time, there is another one thing increases. Can somebody tell me that what increases?
Cost.
Cost.
Yes. Yes. This is increasing cost per bit. There is a parameter which decreases in the reverse direction or decreases.
Speed.
Can someone? What decreases here? Sorry, the increases in the increases in the reverse direction. That means decreases. What increases in the reverse direction?
Size.
Yes.
Capacity.
So it's size or capacity. Increasing size or capacity. This is what happens. So if you would like to increase the size of the memory which are closer to the processor, you'll have to increase the cost. But if you do it, you get better speed, which is essentially the objective. So we need something which is with the best speed and the lowest cost. Probably that will be the most optimum condition that we want. If we are able to do it, then probably we will be happy. Okay. But that may not be always true. That we may not be able to find out something which are very fast and the cost is reasonably low. Okay. So if you look into the cost of typical implementation of the cache memory, which is pretty high. These values what I will be showing you now. Let me share with you one slide. I'm just switching on my camera to save the bandwidth related issues. Now you look into my presentation slide. Static RAMs or SRAMs which operates in the frequency or the time period is basically 0.5 nanoseconds to 2.5 nanoseconds. Okay. So access time. Now, if you look into the cost, it may vary $2,000 to $5,000 per gigabyte, which is a huge cost. If you would like to implement 1 gigabyte static RAM, which will be incorporated to implement the cache memory, you need to spend a lot of money. Even though these figures may be 10 years old, because this Hennessy Patterson's, this is the standard book slides. I will share with you these slides. So these figures are little low or a little older, but you can trust that accordingly things have changed across all sectors like static RAM, dynamic RAM, magnetic disk, and ideal. All these things have already changed, but the ratios are almost same, remaining same. If you look into dynamic RAMs, you see the access time. It is 100 times slower than the static RAM, whereas the cost is drastically reduced, $200 per gigabyte. So $20 per gigabyte. That means approximately 1,500 rupees per gigabyte. So if you would like to buy 16 GB ROM, 16 GB RAM, it may be around 20,000. Again, I'm saying that these figures are 10 years old. So now it may be $10. Okay. Or if you buy it 32 GB RAM from market, I don't know, maybe 5,000, 6,000 rupees you have to spend, or 10,000 maximum. Okay. Whereas if you look into the last figure, magnetic disk, now you see the speed. It is in the order of milliseconds. Okay. And the cost is drastically low, even 20 cents per gigabyte. So this is what the market, where the market stands. But what is our requirement? We require ideal memory should be access time of SRAM and the capacity and cost per gigabyte of the disk. So we want the capacity or cost as compared to the magnetic disk, whereas we require the access time of the static RAM, which is an ideal condition of a memory, which may not be possible, but that is what we will see, that how far we can actually reach there. Now let us define a couple of terminology here. Why cache memory came? The reason that we are actually discussing cache memory, there are primarily two reasons. One is the temporal locality, another one is spatial locality. So if you analyze the behavior of any program, any generic program that you write, you will find that programs usually access a small portion of the address space at any time. Okay. Now, if you further refine the statement, you will find that there are two ways the access happens. One is temporal locality, where the items accessed recently are likely to be accessed again soon. So recently, that's why the temporal things are coming. Like instructions in a loop. If you write a loop, for loop, you know that the inside the loop, whatever the instructions are there, they will be executed frequently. So that means the instruction that is being accessed immediately or right now, there is a high chance that the same instruction will be used soon. That's called temporal locality. And this is a common behavior of any kind of program. Then the other locality is the spatial locality. Spatial locality says that if you access an instruction, it is highly likely that you will access the nearby instruction soon. So if you access instruction I, then it is likely that you will access instruction I+1 or I+2 soon, sooner than any other instructions which is far away from the current instruction. So what do you say? The probability of accessing a nearby instruction is more than the probability of accessing an instruction which is far away from the current instruction. That's called spatial locality. Like sequential instruction access, array data. Even though there are jump instructions available, we know that where the consecutive access may not be true always. But when we talk about a general overview, we say that the probability of accessing the nearby instructions are much higher than accessing instructions which are far away from the current instruction. So with these two behavior of the access pattern, one is the temporal locality, another one is the spatial locality, cache memory has been designed. So what these two behaviors point out? The first one, programs access a small portion of their address space at any time. So if the programs access a small portion of their address space at any time, then why not to concentrate on that amount of the memory which is most frequently used, and to bring that portion into a special zone or special memory which may be costly but which is very fast, and that is what called cache memory. Now what do we understand by address space? Can someone tell me what is the address space of a program? I think this has been discussed in your operating system. What is the address space of a program?
The memory is unallocated.
One by one.
The upper and lower bound where the program is stored inside memory.
Yes. So that means the range of the address inside which the program resides, including the data, code, and everything. So that's we call it address space. So when we talk about an operating system is 32-bit, 64-bit, how do we define it? It actually defines the address space of the program. So a 32-bit operating system usually handles processes which can have address space of 2 to the power 32, which is a huge number. It may not be required, but it supports programs of size 2 to the power 32. Now you may question that 2 to the power 32, which is 4 GB. Let's assume that byte addressable. Okay, 4 gigabyte. 2 to the power 32 is 4 gigabyte. If you at any point of time, if you check that how many processes are currently running in a system, you will probably find hundreds of processes running. Just do PS minus A. You'll find all the processes which are running. Now the question is, if each and every process consumes 4 gigabytes of memory and you have 100 such processes available, then the total amount of memory requirement is going to be more than terabytes or hundreds of gigabytes. How you are going to deal with it? So can someone give me any answer that how it is happening or how it is handled? Say you have 100 processes. Every process is of size 2 to the power 32 bits, 2 to the power 32 bytes address space. So ideally, how much space is required in the memory for all the processes? Because all the processes are currently under operating system, they are running. So they must be residing into the memory. So how much memory is required? 100 into 4, 400 GB, 400 GB, which is a huge number. 400 GB memory. Who provides 400 GB of primary memory? Forget about cache memory. Is it possible?
No,
No,
sir.
Then how do we tackle it?
Redo
Sir,
queue, wait queue, like that.
I think operating system takes care by virtually allocating that addresses, and as and when address that much amount is required, it is allocated.
Right. So that's the concept of virtual memory, that you don't need to store all the processes in the memory. Rather, you store only the active processes or the active portion of the processes in the memory. And as and when they are required, you just bring it from the secondary storage device. That is the concept of virtual memory. Okay. So you do not need to store each and every process into the primary memory, even if all of them are active. You can store only the designated portion of the codes into the active memory. Rest can reside inside the secondary storage device or inside your backup device. So that's the concept of virtual memory. Okay. So the logical address space of the program can vary from 000 to maximum size supported by the operating system, which is here 2 to the power 32. However, you have a limited physical memory. Okay, so that part is dealt with virtual memory. Now we find a similar kind of scenario when we talk about cache memory. Why I actually introduced that for virtual memory. Virtual memory must have been discussed in your theory class, that the same behavior or phenomena we see into the typical cache memory and primary memory relationship. The same relationship we find it there. Because of the locality of references, you do not need the whole program to be available to the processor. Only a segment of the program is needed, which is frequently used due to temporal locality and spatial locality. And somehow if you can maintain that, you are done. With a small amount of fast memory or faster memory available with you, you can actually tackle the issue of storing everything into cache memory. which may lead to increasing, which will essentially lead to the increasing cost. But obviously, you cannot always satisfy. That's why there are two things which we will introduce here, that whenever there is a cache, there is a chance that you will get the value from the cache or you may not get the value from the cache. So now we shall introduce a few terminologies for our understanding purpose. I shall again switch on my camera so that you can now look into this. So some important terminologies which are needed to understand the cache memory. Okay. So we have understood temporal locality, spatial locality, we introduce here page or frame, we introduce here hit rate, we introduce here miss rate, we introduce here miss penalty. These are some important terms. We have understood that what is temporal locality, what is spatial locality. Page or frame, we are talking about units of access. So these are consecutive memory locations. Every location is of size word. So let's assume that your word size is 4 bytes, 32-bit word. Your page size, page or frame, will be some words. How many? Usually we keep it in power of 2. It may be 2 to the power k words. K can be 2, K can be 3, K can be 4. Okay. When we talk about the address or the block in terms of main memory, we call it page. Okay. Or logical address is basically given name page. So any logical address space, this is the logical address space. This is address space. Starting from 0 to 2 to the power 32 minus 1. So if it is byte addressable, then basically 4 locations will make one word. This is W0. There are so many words which make one page. Okay, something like that. So this is one page, this is another page, this is another page. This is one word, this is another word 1, this is word 2, this is word 3. This becomes page 0. Here actually I have divided into this. So this is byte 1, this is byte 2, this is byte 3, this is byte 4. So this is byte 0, this is byte 1, this is byte 2, this is byte 3. If you draw it in 4 bytes here, then you can simply skip this division here. Now this is called page. When the same space is reserved inside the cache memory, we call them frame. Okay, so page size is usually kept as frame size. This is for virtual or logical address space. This is for physical address space. So processor only understands this physical address space. And there has to be a mapping from logical address space to physical address space. That is what basically is done during cache memory address translation. Okay.
So, sir, page size is determined in logical address space of that
Page
program.
size is determined by the operating system. Okay. Operating system usually defines that, okay, I shall use a page size of 2 to the power 4 words per page. That is the prerogative of the operating system to decide that what will be the page size. Okay. And based on that, the frame sizes will also be decided. Okay. So even some operating systems, systems support multiple page sizes. Okay. So that's an internal part. So that's why paging is strictly handled by operating system. So it decides that what will be the page size. And to keep it compatible with the physical memory, we ensure that page size equals to frame size. So when I write P0, you assume that this becomes a logical address space. When I write F0, you assume that it's a physical address space or physical page or physical segment of the memory.
So, sir, frame size is in RAM, right?
Frame size.
Yes, sir.
Yes, frame size is in memory. It may be cache memory. Okay, because currently we are talking about cache memory. Okay.
So that physical here refers to cache.
Yes, physical here is also primary memory, because cache memory is one portion of the primary memory. Okay, which has certain privilege. That means its access is very fast. Okay, so when you talk about frame size or frame, we basically talk about the cache memory. When we talk about page, we actually talk about main memory or the logical address space. Okay. Even though main memory is physical in nature, but you don't access memory directly from the, or CPU does not get the access of the does not access from the main memory directly. It always accesses through cache memory. So if it is not available in the cache memory, the first job is it needs to bring it from the main memory to the cache memory, then from cache memory to the CPU. Okay.
Sir, in some operating systems like in Windows,
So
they provide.
sometimes we also call it block. This is also with respect to cache, we also call it block, cache block. So you will find it in the books. It is actually written as block or blocks or lines. In some reference you will find it's called block. In some reference you will find line. Cache block, cache line, or frame. They are same. Okay.
Yes.
So their size always kept same so that the transfer happens very easily. Now we need to understand hit rate. Then what do you mean hit? If the accessed data is present in upper level. So now we are talking about hit rate. It is defined at the number of hits per say 100 access. So if you access 100 times, out of 100 times, so 99 times you get a hit. So you call it 99% is the hit rate. Then there is called hit ratio is hits divided by access. So it's same thing. I mean to say the 0.99 if you basically convert it into hit ratio, it becomes 0.99. Out of 100 accesses, you get 99 times the data from the current location. So access satisfied by upper level. So these accesses are satisfied by upper level. So upper level means you have the processor, you have the cache memory here. Say here is the data, and then you have the larger memory. This is cache, this is main memory. This is the upper level memory. This is upper level. This is lower level. So if you get it from here itself, out of 100 times, how many times you are getting it from here itself? That's basically called hit rate. If you put it into a ratio format, it will be the number of hits divided by number of accesses. That gives you hit ratio. Then another one is miss rate or ratio. You can calculate it equals to 1 minus hit ratio. And then another one is, so his rate, miss rate, and then we have miss penalty. This is time taken to get the data when there is a miss. That's called miss penalty. If you directly get it from here, say it takes tau amount of time. If you don't get it, it may take 100 tau. So that's called miss penalty. Tau plus 100 tau. This is called miss penalty. Because first tau, you are checking it here, you don't find it. You'll have to get another 100 tau, spend another 100 tau time to get it from here. So total miss penalty becomes 100 plus this tau.
So can you shift the page a little?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so hit rate, miss rate, miss penalty. These are the three important terminologies that we will use it for evaluation of the performance of the cache memory. Hit rate, miss penalty. Temporal locality, spatial locality.
So for miss penalty, it is time taken to get the data from memory, from main memory to cache, or from main memory to processor?
Main memory to cache, from cache to processor, both.
Okay, the whole time. So 100
Yes.
tau plus tau.
Yes, because first time you try it here, that tau is already lost. You don't get it. Next time you transfer it from here to here, then here to here. Okay. So basically 2 tau plus 100 tau is the total time. Out of this, one tau will be removed because 1 tau is anyway required.
Yes, sir. Okay.
That's why tau plus 100 tau. So these are the terminologies which you need to remember, and these are used, these parameters are used to measure the performance of a typical cache memory.
Sir, does tau include taking and like querying and getting back results both?
Yes, yes.
Or
I mean to
or
say
does
this
it only
100
include?
tau, this 100 tau is basically transferring the data from here to here.
Mhm. Okay, sir.
The 100 tau means transferring data from here to here, and 1 tau is required from here to here. So initial, during the first tau, you did not find it here. Okay, so you need to get 100 tau from here to here, and then 1 tau from here to here. Okay, so
Okay,
that
sir.
additional 1 tau plus 100 tau is basically called the miss penalty. In some books you may find that they will ignore this part because this is so small. That's why miss penalty is, in many books you will find that they are often calculated with respect to this value 100 tau, because that is the larger amount of that larger time spent on transferring the data from main memory to the cache memory. But if you basically do a finer calculation, 1 tau will be added. 100 plus 1 tau is the miss penalty.
Sir?
Yes.
Sir, does a frame consist of contiguous memory?
Yes, these are contiguous memories. When you talk about frame, we are talking about contiguous memory. And when we transfer, or when there is a miss, we don't transfer only one byte or one word. We transfer the entire block, cache block or cache line. Why? Can someone tell me why we are transferring the whole block?
So that in future, all the accesses, there is a high
Right.
probability that
Exactly, that temporal locality and spatial locality. Because we know that the program behaves like temporal locality and program has a behavior of temporal locality and spatial locality. So why only to transfer 1 byte? Rather than transferring 1 byte, we will transfer the whole block or whole cache line into the cache memory, or whole block, whole frame from main memory to the cache memory, so that it can exploit temporal locality and spatial locality. That's it. Now, with this, we can now move ahead with the designing process. How do we design it? There are certain questions. So, we can now define probably the cache memory. Define cache memory. The crude definition can be the level of memory hierarchy closest to the CPU. Now there are certain questions now. Let's say you have an array which is accessed sequentially, one after another. So given accesses, say x1, x2, xn minus 1, xn. And at present, your cache memory contains some, these are all blocks or lines. We are just, for the sake of simplicity, we are assuming that one variable is stored inside one block, but which may not be correct because one variable does not take that much amount of space. But this is just for the simplicity, we assume it. Let's say I give something like this. This is before a reference to xn. Now we have to access the elements x1 to xn, maybe in a different order. You do not know that in which order these accesses will happen. Or multiple times you may access. You do not know that. Now, a next access for xn comes. Access for xn comes. The question is, there are two questions now. How do we know that xn is already present in cache or not? The second question is, where do we look? First, these are the two questions, and the memory will be, cache memory will be designed based on these two questions. First of all, you'll have to look into how do you know that whether XN is already present or not. If you would like to search them one after another, then it will be time consuming. It will be time consuming. So sequential access to all the elements will be obviously time consuming. There is no way we can know that whether the current element Xn is present or not. And then the second part is, where do we look? So if you know that the element is present by some logic, then the next question is that where do you search the element? Because this is a larger memory. We are searching for an element. We are not searching for an address. So the design considers to answer these two questions. If we are able to answer these two questions, probably we can design cache memory. And that is the logic behind designing the cache memory in a different way than usually what we do it in primary memory or main memory. First of all, your main memory can be very large. It can be very large. And you have a small memory which is called cache memory, and you want to basically ensure that any access to the main memory must be mapped to a cache memory location. Do you agree with me or not? Because CPU generates address based on the logical address space. That the logical address space, what is the range of the logical address space? 0 to 2 to the power 32. That's a huge number. So even if you have the logical address space available with you, full logical address space available with you, you do not have that much amount of memory available in the cache. But as per your policy of storing a program into main memory, any main memory location can be used to store any program. Okay, so that leads to a typical problem of mapping. Mapping techniques. So from now onwards, I shall change the terminology. When I talk about main memory, it's main memory. When I talk about cache, I don't use the terminology memory, I only use cache. So it's the memory and it's the cache. Let me tell you that suppose your cache has 8 blocks. This is B0, this is B1, this is B2, this is B3, this is B4, B5, B6, B7. And their addresses. Now, how many blocks are here? 8 blocks. Eight blocks are there. In main memory, you may have 32 blocks. Let me do it, then you will get it. The idea will be clear. I shall add a few more blocks for simplicity. I think now we have 32 blocks. These blocks are, now if it is 32 blocks, you know that how many bits are needed to represent one block? 5, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, then 0, 0, 0, 0, 1, and this way it will be 1, 1, 1, 1, 1.
So these are blocks, you're saying?
Yeah, these are main memory blocks, these are cache memory blocks. Okay. These are all blocks. These are not one address, they are blocks. It may be one block may be having say 2 to the power k words.
Okay, block means pages.
Block means page.
Oh.
Block means page. These are all page. Okay. And I am only interested about the first address of the block. That's it. So don't get confused with these consecutive addresses. These are not actually consecutive addresses. They are maybe the starting address of the block. Okay. So I have just, for simplicity, you can assume that one word is one block. Here actually k equals to 1, or say k equals to 0. K equals to 0. Okay. For
So
this
those
example,
blocks may contain many words.
yeah, I am assuming here k equals to 0. That means one word. Okay. For simplicity, I am assuming k equals to 0. Okay. But it can be k equals to 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever maybe. In that case, these addresses will not be consecutive addresses. Say if one particular, let's assume that B0 is 16 bytes equals to 4 into 4 bytes equals to 4 words. Okay, then you know that it is 16 bytes, so you need another, because one particular address, if this one, if you assume that one word, okay, so you know that.
So please bring down paper a little bit down. Thank you.
Yes. So if B0 is 16 bytes, so you have 4 words. Okay, so for 4 words you need 2 bits to represent a word. Okay, so accordingly the address will increase. These 3, what I mean to say, that the least significant 3, most significant 3 bits will be like this. Is that clear? For this example, I have assumed k equals to 0. That means one block equals to one word, and this one word exactly fits into one block here in the main memory. This can change. Value of k can change. For the time being, let's assume that it is one word. One block is one word. Correct? And memory is word addressable. You can only use, you can only address one word. You do not address one byte. Let's assume for the simplicity. So one block will be mapped to here. Now, why it is troublesome? Let me tell you that part. You write a program. Say, I will come back to this page again. Let me take another one page. Say user program. Is like this. Again, with the same concept of blocks. You have written your code. This is user code. Code and data. When you write this code and you ask the operating system to load this, so I can actually now this user code programs as pages P0, P1, P2, P3, and say Pk-1. These are pages. Because virtual, logical address, I'm saying that these are pages. Because when you write an instruction here, you generate the relative address. Say you want to jump here, you generate the relative address with respect to this location. If you want to jump from here to here, you give a relative address from here. You don't mind about where your code will be loaded. Your code can be loaded at any location in the memory. That is the concept of paging. In virtual memory, if you look into it, I think this concept has been discussed in your operating system, that virtual memory concept, that your page, these are the user code and data. Your page can be loaded anywhere into the main memory. There is no constraint you can give it to the operating system that please load my page into the memory here. Why? Can you tell me that what is the reason that we do paging? Paging has been discussed. Is the concept paging discussed in your class? Operating system class?
Sir, memory management was taught in 2-3 hours, so we'll have to revise it again.
Okay, this is very important. So paging has to be understood clearly. So paging means whenever you write a program, you don't ask operating system that, see, this is my program of say 200 bytes, you please consecutively load it. You cannot instruct operating system to do that. As simple as it is. Operating system will divide your code into pages, logical pages, and depending on the current availability of the memory, it will load it. Now, this part is the main memory, which is controlled by the operating system. Main memory is entirely controlled by operating system. And currently we have 32 blocks. Main memory has 32 blocks. Let's assume that main memory has 32 blocks. I'm taking a very simple example. And cache memory has 8 blocks.
Thirty-two blocks means it can load 32 pages.
It can load 32 pages. 32 block means maximum it has 32 blocks. These are physical space. Main memory is a physical space.
Okay,
main memory is a physical space. 32 blocks means 32 into 4 bytes main memory. Because I have assumed that one block equals to 1 word and 1 word equals to 4 bytes. That's why k equals to 0. I have already assumed it. Okay, I have assumed that 1 block equals to 1 word. This is assumption. Again, this is assumption. 1 block equals to 1 word. 1 word equals to 4 bytes. These are assumptions for this. So when I make k equals to 0, that means 1 block equals to 1 word. When I assume that 1 word equals to 4 bytes, 32 bit, okay, then my memory size becomes 32 into 4 bytes. Is that clear now?
Yes, sir.
So this physical memory, so this is a physical memory. Physical memory available to the system. An operating system has divided the memory into blocks. Each block has 4 bytes or 1 word, and there are 32 blocks. Correct? And you have a cache memory which has 8 blocks. So these two things need to be understood clearly first. You have physical memory which has 32 blocks. You have cache memory which has 8 blocks. For the simplicity purpose, I have assumed that 1 block equals to 1 word. So only one value can be stored into 1 block, but which is not the case. Block size actually varies. Block size is always in the order of 2 to the power k, usually 512 bytes, 1024 bytes, something like that, or kilobytes also. Sometimes 512k is a block size. Okay, it can be 1k block, 2k block, 4k block, 512 bytes. It can be 512 bytes, it can be 1k, 2k, 4k. Blocks are usually kept like that, not very higher block size, because there are certain limitations also. If you basically increase the block size, there will be certain issues. If you make it very small also like this, there will be other issues also. But this one I have considered is just to explain the concept of mapping. I have assumed that k equals to 0. So do not get confused that the block is always k equals to 0. No. This must be clear at the beginning. Okay. So blocks is always a power of 2. Here I have assuming that k equals power of 2 equals to 0. Okay.
Sir, one
Now,
doubt, like block size in physical memory and cache are same.
same. That's what I have already assumed that in the first part now, that size are always same. Block size.
Yes, sir, I know you have assumed, but in reality, can it be different?
Yes, yes. It has to be. It has to be. This size and this size must be same. Otherwise, there will be other
Okay, sir.
complications. This size and this size is same. One block is fitting exactly into one memory block. One cache block is exactly fitting into one memory block. Okay, that must be there. Okay, now here basically page. In case of user program, we call it page. Now my assumption is that these pages are also same. In virtual memory, if you look into it, the address space is divided into pages. So these pages are also for the simplicity. We assume that these pages are assigned by the user. User assigns these pages. Actually, operating system divides the code into pages. They are consecutive addresses. And we also assume that this page size is equals to the block size of the cache memory is also equals to the block size of the physical memory, which may slightly vary. The number of page or the page size may be higher than the block size, cache block size. But for the simplicity, for the current problem, we can assume that this page size is same as the block size of the cache memory or block size of the physical memory. Okay. Is that clear now?
Yes, sir.
Now you have written a program which has been divided into these many pages. These are all logical addresses. Remember, these addresses are not as per the physical memory availability. These are logical addresses. Okay. Now the question comes that whenever, so OS loads these pages into main memory, based on, what shall I write? Any guess? Read the sentence. OS loads these pages into main memory based on,
Availability.
yes, available slot. So as a user, I do not have any control. The physical pages or physical memory blocks which are controlled by the operating system, as a user, I have no control. What I do, I only say that to the operating system that this is my code. Then the operating system, based on current available blocks in the main memory, loads the program. Now look into this. I am shading some of these blocks. Let's forget this. Cut down this. 8 pages are there. Now, what the operating system can do? Operating system can do, this is P0, this is P1, this is P2, this is P3, this is P4, this is P5, this is P6, this is P7. So I have 7 pages here. Based on the availability, operating system has loaded these pages into the memory. So from here to here, from logical address space to bring the pages into the physical address space, that is the part of the virtual memory. Okay. And it is done based on paging. So this is basically paging and virtual memory. And this is not the cache memory. Again, we are not in the cache memory. This part is called this is part of the virtual memory. That which page comes to which block is a part of the memory management unit, paging unit. Which page comes to which block is done by paging. So this is called paging. From here to here, from logical space to the physical memory space, and the vice versa. Vice versa is not needed basically. Sometimes some of these pages may be replaced. Okay, depending on the availability slots. Some other program is running. You are running out of these spaces. What you'll have to do? You'll have to basically store some of these pages into secondary storage device. Okay, that is, we call it page replacement. Okay, which is a part of virtual memory. Now, once a program is loaded, maybe partially or fully, let's assume that partially. It may not be possible that the full program, virtual memory, that's why the good thing about virtual memory, that it is not needed that entire program must be loaded here into the memory. It may not be needed. That is the concept of virtual memory. Only a few of the pages may be loaded and the program can run. So that is the part of the virtual memory. Now comes to the actual access part. Now, in case of without cache memory, the CPU directly accesses these pages, which we are doing it in 8085, 8086, where there is no concept of cache memory. There is no concept of cache memory. We simply access all the references or data directly from the main memory. Directly from the main memory. Okay. Now we have introduced a cache memory, which is a smaller one but very fast. So the CPU first looks the data or the instruction into the cache memory. If it fails, then it goes to the physical memory. If it fails, then it takes help of the virtual memory to goes to the secondary storage device. So CPU accesses this. This is cache. If it misses, it goes here, miss, and satisfies. If here also it misses, it goes to virtual memory.
Secondary
what-
memory, sir.
Hmm?
Program was stored in secondary memory, right?
Yes, if it is not possible, if it is not available in the primary memory, physical memory, it must be there in the secondary storage device. That's why virtual memory is there now.
Yes, sir.
So the replacement then happens. You'll have to bring the page from the secondary storage device, to the primary memory. Okay. And if the primary memory is full, you'll have to replace thing. Okay. So translation happens from CPU to cache. If it is satisfied, happy. Not satisfied, cache means you go to the primary memory, get back. If here also if it fails, you'll have to go to the secondary storage device with the help of virtual memory. So first you bring it from secondary storage device to the primary memory through virtual memory paging scheme. Then you bring it from primary memory to the cache memory through the miss penalty. Then you get it from cache memory to the primary memory, cache memory to the CPU registers. So that order, that sequence you need to understand properly. Okay, let me, get your opinions up to this point, because once you understand this, then probably the mapping schemes will be very easy. This mapping I have not yet discussed about. You see, I started with mapping techniques, but to understand why mapping is needed, that is what we will talk about. So one mapping is from here to here. Another mapping is from here to the secondary storage device. This mapping will be discussed in the virtual memory. This mapping will be discussed in the cache memory. Tell me, any doubt on this? All of you understood the concept?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Now let me share my screen, because this part now it is easy for you to understand. So I'll switch off the camera. I'll go back to the slide mode now. So we are now ready to discuss about the mapping technique. Now look into this mapping. And I want your comment on this figure, how these arrows are drawn. This is called direct mapping. I will not explain it. I already gave you enough clues. Now tell me that why it is called, what kind of mapping it is. What kind of mapping it is?
Many to one mapping.
Yes, it is many to one. And why? You'll have to give some reason that why this many to one mapping is needed.
So because cache memory का size छोटा है और memory का size बड़ा है.
हाँ, so memory का
तो
size बड़ा है. That means your actual program can reside in any one of these blocks of the primary memory. Any one of these blocks of the primary memory. Okay, because that depends on the operating system where your program is stored. You have no control. So your program may be stored here, 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 and here. But CPU accesses the memory or gets the data directly from the cache memory. CPU will not come to the main memory. CPU will always take the value from the cache memory. So that's why there is a need. It's many to one. At the same time, it is also each and every memory block should be mapped.
Also,
So,
sir, like they have
yeah.
cache size gap between them, so that locality can be used efficiently. Because if we are in certain region, then if we access left and right, up and down, then there will be no reloading kind of thing. So like it is highly likely that our program will be stored in a particular location. So we will not be like stepping eight sizes always.
No, but that can be a case when your block size is small. But if your block size is sufficiently large, okay, then if you load only one block, you are expected to get all the instructions there itself. The locality will be satisfied from the block itself. For the current example, which I actually took during when I was using my own notes, I was assuming that the block size is one word. But in ideal case, block size varies from 512 bytes to 1K to 2K to 4K, 8K blocks, which are sufficient enough to satisfy the spatial locality and spatial locality issues. Can you repeat that in the the same thing with respect to temporal locality? What you said?
Okay, I got it. I was thinking like each and every block is holding instruction for a program, and like if like cache size is 8, so for a particular program it would be mapped properly
No.
to like
No, actually, this mapping, yeah, I got it. But actually, you see, carefully observe the arrows. The gray blocks are mapped to 1 here. The blue blocks are mapped to 1 here. Okay. So that means if you generate an address which is in this block or in this block or in this block or in this block, you can directly look into the cache memory, this block. Now,
So-
what will be the difficulty here? If four different programs are currently loaded into the memory, and one program is loaded here, another program is loaded here, another program is loaded here, and another program is loaded here. But this block can hold only one of them. Correct? This block 001 block can hold only one of them. It cannot hold 4 at a time. But if one of these programs is getting executed, the CPU must always look that program from this address. So what does it mean? That if you keep 4 different programs here, okay, and if the operating system continuously switches them, then you have a higher chance of miss. say in one time quantum, this process is running and this process is mapped to this location. So you need to get the value from here. If it is not there, you need to bring it. There is a miss. In the next time quantum, if this process is executed, again this process is mapped to here, then this, the previous one needs to be swapped back and you need to bring this block to here. In the next time quantum, if this one is required, then again you need to store back this one to here and then you bring this one to here and so on, so forth. But the searching is very easy. If because the CPU generates this physical address. Remember, the CPU generates these addresses. If this address comes, you remember that I was talking about two questions. Now again look into the camera. I actually use two questions. How do we know xn is already present in the cache or not? Let's first answer, where do we look? Where do we look? The second question, let's answer this one first. Where do we look? So to answer this question, you need to see this. Now, can someone tell me, with the help of these bits, which are written here, and with the arrows, can we answer this question, where do we look?
जिनके least significant bits ये वाले होंगे.
Yes.
sir.
If it matches with the least significant 3 bits, okay, you basically go to that particular block. You do not need to search the entire cache memory, because you know that you have stored this block. If the address is generated for this block must be stored into this location, so you do not need to go anywhere else. If the address is generated for this block, this must be here. If the address is generated for this block, this must be here. If the address is generated for this block, this must be here. This is the answer to the first question. Where do we look? The second question. The first question was, how do we know that xn is already present in the cache? You go to that, but how do you know that this is actually related to this? Or this is not related to this, is not related to this, is not related to this. How do we know? So we need to store some additional information for that. The information about the process needs to be stored within the cache memory. So it's a valid and invalid kind of information. You need to store it.
Like
Okay.
lower bound and upper bound of addresses, and we can compare.
No, it's not lower bound and upper bound addresses. See, the lower bound or upper, these are blocks. Okay, these are blocks. This block entirely fits into this block. Okay, but whether this block is currently staying here, or this block is currently staying here, or this block is currently staying here, or this block is currently staying here, how do you know? All are having same
Just
size.
like every block will have address range, right? and we can store like which address bound is stored, like lower bound and upper bound we can store in the cache only, and we can compare.
Yes. So the lower, so that higher order bits of the addresses will be now used. Correct? The
Yes, sir.
higher order address bits will be used to decide, because this 01, this 00, this 01, this 10 and this 11. Okay. They are called tag bits. These tag bits decide that out of these 4 options, currently which one is holding here. Okay. So with the 3 bits, the 3 LSB, least significant bits, you reach one of these 8 locations. Correct? Once you reach the one of these 8 location, you check that these 2 are matching. There will be additional 2 bits stored here. Those are tag bits. So that will tell you that out of these 4 options, currently which option is being stored here. So one portion of the address is used to find out the block. Another portion of the address is used to find out that which block out of these 4 options are currently staying there. So the entire address is divided into 2 parts. Index and tag. Index 000 to 111. These bits are index bits. Okay. Now additionally, this is the cache memory. This is the, forget about this V bit. V bit we will come at some other point. This is the cache memory. Okay. Index actually is the address to reach to that block. Once you reach, you'll have to check it that which tag is there. Hello.
Yes, sir.
Oh, there was some network issue, I thought. Okay. So index basically finds out that which block. Tag finds out that out of the 4 options, which one. If you carefully look into this, we have 5-bit address mapped to 3 bits. Now how it happens? Because this block number 001 can hold any one of these memory blocks 00001, 01, 001, 10001 and 11001. Any one of these 4 blocks can actually stay here. You do not know that which one is staying. Okay, so you need 2 comparisons. One is the tag comparison, another one is basically block address. So how the mapping happens? Only one choice. Block address modulo number of blocks in cache. Okay, it's a simple modulo operation, will tell you. So if you have 2 to the power k number of blocks in the memory, and if you have say 2 to the power L number of blocks in the cache, you know that each and every cache block will be mapped to 2 to the power k divided by 2 to the power L number of memory blocks. It's a many to one mapping. Correct. It's a many to one mapping.
In this case, it was 32 by 8.
In that case, in this case, it is basically 32. That means four blocks are mapped to one cache block. 4 memory blocks are mapped to one cache blocks.
Yes, sir.
In this case, the 4 memory blocks are mapped to one cache blocks. So that's why the LSBs you can see that if you see these addresses, memory addresses 001, here it is also 001 last 3 bits, here it is also 001 last 3 bits, here is also 001 last 3 bits, here is also 001 last 3 bits, and here is also okay, the 4 are over. So for this particular cache block, it can actually map this block or this block or this block or this block, and it's a full mapping. Full mapping means all the memory blocks must be mapped to one of the cache blocks. Why?
Programs can be loaded anywhere.
Yes, the program can be loaded anywhere. The operating system can load the program anywhere. So when you create such a direct mapping, you'll have to ensure that all memory, that's why they are always kept in power of 2. The reason that we keep it in power of 2 and we utilize all the bits is just for that. Now the trouble is, because of many to one mapping, there will be issues. Which one is currently stored here? That you need to check it first here. If there is a match with the tag, you are lucky. If there is no match, then if you check the tag bit, you found that there is a mismatch. Then what is the condition? It is called cache miss. If the tag field is not matching, then it's a cache miss. Block field will always match, because one of the locations it will definitely match it, because it's a full mapping. It will always match with one of the blocks. So the last significant k bits which represent the block number is used to go to that particular cache block, and then actual comparison happens. So the first comparison is a kind of direct mapping, direct comparison, and then it is basically a bitwise comparisons with the tag field. So the first one is a simple decoder output. A decoder is needed to reach to that particular block. After that, a comparator is needed to check the bits. So the circuit requirement is a decoder followed by a comparator. Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. And sir, if if every block contains like 4 or 5 words,
yes,
then that location we can.
Yeah, that location. So those bits I have not actually talked about. That's why I assumed that k equals to 0. Okay. So that remaining significant, list significant bits will be used inside the block to search inside the block. That's an easier part.
Okay.
I think I'll stop here. I need a couple of more lectures to complete this one. I hope that, because this is very important, that mapping techniques which I will discuss in next Friday, they will be based on the partitioning of the address feeds into different parts, the block address and then the tag field. Okay, block field and the tag field. I assume that the address inside the block is simple thing, 2 bits, 3 bits, 4 bits, whatever may be there, depending on the block size, that can be managed. Okay, but for block, to reach a block, you need a decoder, and once you reach the block, you need a comparator to check that whether the block you are currently looking is present or not. So the circuit complexity, you can understand, it's a decoder followed by a comparator. It's a decoder followed by a comparator. Okay. Yeah, so that's it for today. We shall come back to the topic Friday.
सर वो लास्ट में क्या बोला था आपने रिगार्डिंग कि k is equal to 0, जो सुशांत ने क्वेश्चन पूछा था अभी.
हाँ. What he asked that, what about the exact location? So I assume that there is only one address inside a block. If there are multiple addresses, I will add couple of more least significant bits. Okay, so once you reach within a block, okay. So basically, what he asked about that, dividing the address field. Currently, we have divided the address field into two parts. One is the block address, and then the tag field. But if a particular block has more number of bytes inside that block, then you need also bits to locate a byte inside the block. Okay.
Okay, sir. Okay.
For the case we have assumed that k equals to 0, so we have one word, so one address is there only.
Okay, sir, understood.
And sir, whenever transfer happens, entire block, all.
Yes, whenever the transfer happens, whenever transfer happens from memory to the cache. Whenever transfer happens from memory to the cache memory, it always transfers the entire block. That's why the miss penalty is more. Because you don't transfer only one block or one address or one location. You transfer the entire block. Okay. But a miss penalty, actually you will reduce further misses because you are transferring the whole block again based on the same concept, that temporal locality and spatial locality. Okay, so you are less likely to get miss later stage. That's why you transfer the whole block.
Sir, तो इसमें optimization नहीं होगा क्या अभी?
होगा. We have optimization mapping techniques. We have optimizations.
Okay.
Okay, so that's it for today. Thank you. If you have no further question, we can stop the class today.